She was 16 when they took her across the border. Court records call her Consort Han, one of 100 Korean girls sent to the Ming Emperor. Her mother couldn't write, so she marked the papers in ink, trading her daughter for survival. Han would spend 16 years behind the red walls of the Forbidden City. She would witness a terrible tragedy unfold. She would beg once to see her mother again, and when the Emperor died, her life would end as part of an ancient ritual. This is what really happened inside China's imperial harem. Stay until the end and you'll discover the selection process, what training really meant, the competition between women, why pregnancy changed everything, and the events of 1421 that China erased. Think you know what a concubine's life looked like? Silk robes, poetry, luxury? That's propaganda. For 2,000 years, the imperial system took young women by the tens of thousands. Concubines weren't wives. Under imperial law, they weren't human. Official documents classified them as precious objects, the same category as porcelain vases. Every 3 years, officials swept through provinces in the maiden selection. This was systematic collection. Every unmarried girl had to be presented, no exceptions. Hiding your daughter? Treason. Consequence: severe punishment for your entire family. Officials inspected girls carefully. Those who passed were taken. Families received minimal payment, but refusing meant rebellion. The system didn't need force. Poverty did the work. Most families never heard from their daughters again. Some held funerals for daughters still breathing because the girl they raised was already gone. Han's journey took weeks. 15 other Korean girls beside her, sealed inside, forbidden to speak. One tried to escape. They brought her back injured. She passed away days later. The others learned. Resistance wasn't an option. When Han entered the Forbidden City, she stopped being a person. She became a number, property of the Son of Heaven. But first, they had to transform her. The women didn't go straight to the harem. First came refinement, 6 months to 2 years of intense training. Phase 1, erase who you were. They cut your hair, your name became a number. Speaking about family had consequences. Every possession was burned. 20 women slept to a room, woken before dawn, asleep after midnight. Months of exhaustion so complete that resistance became impossible. Phase 2, learn submission. 8 hours daily practicing bows, an imperfect bow. Disciplinary action. They learned to walk soundlessly, keep eyes lowered, exist without taking up space, appear content regardless of how they felt inside. One manual lists 47 rules for standing in the Emperor's presence. Violate any? Consequences. Hit subscribe and like this video if you want more buried history. Phase 3. Palace records describe intensive protocols, clinical language disguising what was happening. After months, survivors were ready for a world where hardship had just begun. The hierarchy was designed to control you. At the top, the empress. Below, imperial consorts, then concubines. At the bottom, hundreds of common concubines. Your rank controlled everything: food, clothing, room size. The empress received generous portions daily. A low-ranking concubine received far less, often even less because eunuchs took provisions. Many suffered poor nutrition, health declining, aging rapidly. The cruelest irony, their declining appearance made them less likely to be summoned. A cycle built into the system. The emperor didn't visit concubines. They were summoned. Every night, a eunuch presented tablets with names. The emperor pointed. The chosen woman was prepared according to strict protocols for security reasons. 2 eunuchs escorted her to the chambers. She had to approach the emperor in a prescribed manner. Here's what nobody knows. A chief eunuch remained present behind a screen. His job? Monitor time. After 30 minutes, he would announce completion. After each encounter, a physician recorded everything for documentation purposes. But here's the reality. Most concubines were never summoned. Not once. Ever. Hundreds of women in the harem, sometimes over 1,000. The emperor might summon 1 or 2 weekly. A concubine could spend decades waiting for a call that would never come. She couldn't leave, couldn't marry, couldn't have children with anyone else. Property in permanent storage. So the women turned on each other. The harem wasn't just a prison, it was an arena. Hundreds competing for one man's attention. Concubines poisoned each other's food, bribed eunuchs to remove rivals. spread rumours to topple women from favour. Records document women slipping abortive herbs into pregnant rivals' tea. If the baby died, so did the mother's chances. Empress Wu Zetian allegedly strangled her own newborn and blamed a rival. That concubine was executed. Wu became empress. The fact this was believable tells you everything. Leave a like if you're still watching. This gets darker. The violence wasn't always physical. Psychological warfare was constant. One concubine pretended friendship for 3 years, only to testify against her rival. The rival was demoted, her children taken. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was survival. The system turned victims into perpetrators because the alternative was being destroyed first. And if a concubine became pregnant, that's when the real nightmare began. Getting pregnant was the worst thing that could happen. A pregnant concubine was isolated in remote palaces. 9 months under surveillance, no visitors, no letters. When the baby was born, it was immediately separated. A boy? Handed to wet nurses. She might see him once yearly, supervised, forbidden to touch him. A girl? Many simply disappeared. Records didn't document low-ranking concubines' daughters. Women were so desperate they consumed abortive herbs. They preferred risking death over bringing a daughter into that system. If a son died, the mother was blamed. One concubine lost 3 children to smallpox. She was accused of poisoned karma and spent 40 years confined to a room. Her crime? Burying her children. Her punishment? Dying alone. But nothing prepared the women for 1421. Emperor Yongle had just inaugurated the Forbidden City. Then a rumour destroyed thousands of lives. One of the emperor's favourite concubines was found dead, officially poisoned. But rumours whispered she'd taken her own life after an affair with a eunuch. The reason? The emperor's impotence. Yongle went mad. Humiliated, paranoid, he ordered an investigation to silence everyone who might know. In a single night, 2,800 women were executed. Servants, cooks, laundresses, any woman who might have heard. The method? Death by 1,000 cuts. Some took hours to die. Girls as young as 12. Women who'd served decades. Pregnant concubines. It didn't matter. By dawn, courtyards had to be washed with water from palace wells, the same wells where later so many women would end their lives. There's no official record. The Ming court erased it, but the testimony of Lady Kui survived. A concubine outside the palace that night. She escaped by accident. Years later, she dictated her account to a Korean envoy. Screams until dawn. Courtyards slick with blood. Her testimony was preserved in Korean archives where censors couldn't reach it. Her last words: "I survived the night of blood only to die in silk." Han also survived the massacre. But 3 years later, when Yongle died, Han was included in the list selected for eternal honour. During the Ming dynasty, there was shunzang, accompanying sacrifice. When an emperor died, his favourite concubines were buried with him, alive. 3 days after the emperor's death, eunuchs compiled a list, 5 to 30 women. The chosen received a last sumptuous meal. Delicacies they'd never tasted. Wine usually forbidden. Musicians played while they ate. Then 2 options. First, hang themselves voluntarily with white silk. This was honourable death. The family received compensation. Second, refuse. Eunuchs would hang them by force or drug them until unconscious. Their bodies, some still breathing, were placed seated in chambers around the tomb, arranged as if waiting, attending, serving, even in death. In 1958, archaeologists opened Emperor Jingtai's tomb. They found 16 women, all seated. Analysis showed cervical trauma, but 3 skeletons showed struggle, fractured bones, scratch marks on walls. They were buried alive and tried to get out. This practice was abolished in 1464, not from compassion, but because victims' families caused political problems. Han wasn't that lucky. She died in 1424, 30 years before abolition. When she begged to return to Korea to care for her mother, the emperor rejected her. They hanged her with white silk and buried her alongside the man who destroyed her life. But abolition didn't bring freedom. It brought decades of confinement. Concubines who survived emperors were sent to the Palace of Perpetual Solitude. The rules: never leave, never marry, never contact the outside world, perform labour, pray 3 times daily. They lived in dormitories on floor mats, basic food. Many went insane. Others stopped eating. The most common escape? Drowning in garden wells. During the 18th century, 12 bodies per year were found in those wells. Guards removed them at night, just one less number. The youngest widow was 14, married to an elderly emperor for 3 months before he died. She spent 61 years in the Palace of Perpetual Solitude, 75 when she died, having spent her adult life mourning a man she barely knew. The last Imperial concubine died in 1946. Her name was Wan Rong, the last empress of China. She spent her final years in a communist prison, addicted to opium. She died alone at 39, buried in an unmarked mass grave. The Forbidden City still stands. What it remembers and forgets tells you everything. Today, 14 million tourists visit yearly. They walk through golden courtyards, they take selfies. Tour guides speak of magnificent architecture. They don't mention the palaces of perpetual solitude. They don't point out the wells where bodies were found weekly. Because some walls still bear marks of desperate hands. Han was 16 when they put her in that carriage. She was 32 when they hanged her. During those 16 years, she never saw her mother again, never set foot in her homeland, never heard her real name spoken with affection. She was sold as tribute, trained as an object, used as a vessel, and buried as an accessory. She was just one of tens of thousands. Over 2,000 years, more than 100,000 women passed through the concubine system. Most names were never recorded. Most stories never told. They existed as numbers in ledgers, as bodies in tombs, as ghosts tourists photograph for Instagram. Modern China prefers to celebrate its history without examining the human cost. But silence doesn't honour victims. Forgetting doesn't bring justice. The walls still stand, the stones remember, and now you remember too. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments which part impacted you most. And if you believe these stories deserve to be told, subscribe to Vile History because there are more buried truths waiting to come to light.